Hook and Queen's demographic. There are 94,000 Filipinos living right in the city limits of New York City. On paper, that might sound like just another statistic in a city defined by massive immigrant populations and diverse cultures. But that is not the number that should make you pause and reevaluate what is about to happen at Flushing Meadows. Here is the real figure you need to absorb. In less than 2 weeks, a massive portion of that 94,000 will be directing their attention, their energy, and their presence toward a single athletic court at the exact same moment for one single individual. This is not a pop concert filling up an arena for a weekend. This is not a cultural parade moving down Fifth Avenue on a Sunday afternoon. This is a professional tennis match. Alex Eala is stepping onto the grand stage of the United States Open, and something is rapidly materializing around her that no Grand Slam organizing committee has ever had to prepare for in modern sports history. We are not talking about a world number one with a decade of dominant titles behind her. We are not talking about a legendary player walking away on a retirement tour. We are talking about a 19-year-old rising star who has yet to win a major Grand Slam trophy. New York has simply never witnessed this specific explosive chemical reaction. A massive, tightly knit immigrant community concentrated heavily in a single urban borough, and an athlete who suddenly becomes the gravitational sun pulling that entire community into her orbit, precisely as the biggest tournament on the American calendar gets underway. I am not going to reveal what all of this means for the draw just yet, because before you can comprehend New York, you need to understand the structural warnings that were fired off in 3 other cities over the past month: Washington, D.C., Toronto, and Cincinnati. 3 distinct metropolitan areas, 3 undeniable warning signals, each one significantly larger and louder than the one before it. Once you examine the full interconnected pattern, you will understand exactly why people inside the tennis industry are throwing around the word explosion, and why that term might actually be a cautious understatement. The meteoric ranking surge. Just 12 short months ago, Alex Eala was floating around world number 53 in the WTA standings. She was recognized by hardcore tennis enthusiasts as a promising junior talent, but she was certainly not a household name capable of halting general sports conversations. Today, she sits comfortably at world number 18. What makes this rise so astonishing is not merely the final position on the computer rankings, but the sheer velocity of the ascent. Eala did not climb the ladder step by standard step through minor lower-tier tournaments across 2 full seasons. She launched herself into the elite top 20 in a matter of a few intense months. But this is not simply a mundane story about a young player discovering good technical form on hard courts. This is an unprecedented narrative about what happens when a global diaspora of tens of thousands of passionate people collectively decides that an athlete belongs to them as a symbol of national pride, while the largest tennis tournament in the Americas unintentionally sets its match courts right in the geographical center of that community. If this intersection of demographic reality and professional athletics intrigues you as much as it intrigues our analytical team, I encourage you to stay locked in for the entire breakdown, because the scope of this story grows far wider. The Pro Tennis 360 channel exists specifically to dissect moments like this, places where traditional sports competition collides head-on with cultural phenomena happening just below the surface. If you notice that our perspective differs sharply from what mainstream networks are broadcasting, that is by deliberate design. That is precisely what we deliver to our audience every single week. Make sure to hit that subscribe button right now if you want to follow every single step of this extraordinary journey as it unfolds across the outer courts and main stadiums of Flushing Meadows. Now, to truly grasp what is coming in Queens, we must rewind back to the foundational question: where did that lightning-fast jump from 53 to 18 actually originate from in terms of on-court performance? Breakthrough at Washington and Wimbledon. This is not your standard sports narrative about a talented youngster making steady, incremental progress under quiet coaching supervision. This is a dramatic performance curve that veteran tennis analysts rarely see happen with such incredible speed at the elite WTA Tour level. Last August, Alex Eala captured the title at the Washington Open, securing the very first WTA singles crown of her professional career. But pay close attention to how she achieved it. She did not navigate through a depleted draw of minor opponents. She stood toe-to-toe with world number 3 Jessica Pegula in the championship final, battling back to secure a thrilling 6-4, 6-4 victory late into the night after severe rain delays disrupted the schedule. That single victory demonstrated immensity of character. She conquered one of the top 3 players on planet Earth under the absolute most stressful tournament conditions imaginable. With that monumental win, she made history as the first Filipino athlete, male or female, to ever lift a WTA singles trophy. But that hardcourt title was far from an isolated stroke of good fortune. Earlier in the summer, on the pristine grass of Wimbledon, Eala stormed into the 4th round, knocking out defending champion Iga Swiatek along the way. That was not a lucky victory aided by an opponent's physical injury or sudden retirement. It was a physical, tactical triumph on natural grass, a surface that virtually every media pundit assumed her game was ill-equipped to handle. Filipino athletes have certainly made occasional waves in American sports history, but no individual athlete has ever generated this specific kind of intense gravitational pull this fast and on such a grand international scale. Here is the critical spatial detail that almost every major sports outlet completely overlooks. Queens holds the absolute highest concentration of Filipino residents anywhere in the entire United States, and Queens happens to be the exact location where the US Open is hosted year after year. This is no minor geographical coincidence. This is a direct high-speed collision between a rising phenom and her ultimate fan base. The Washington flag surge pattern. To fully comprehend why New York City is poised to become the ultimate epicenter of this phenomenon, you have to trace the geographic trail that began in Washington, D.C. At the Washington Open, the vibrant national flag of the Philippines did not merely appear in the stands when Eala was actively playing on court. The flag completely blanketed the entire tournament grounds, day after day, match after match, across the entire calendar week. Here's the operational anomaly that completely caught tournament directors off guard. Regardless of whether Eala was scheduled to play at that hour, hundreds of fanatical supporters occupied main stadium seats for totally unrelated matches featuring completely different players. They sat through hours of neutral tennis simply to hold on to their physical seats for Eala's scheduled match later that afternoon or evening. Let that sink in for a moment. That is not the casual behavior of everyday sports spectators who purchase a ticket, grab a snack, watch a set, and leave when the sun goes down. That is the dedicated behavior of a community that views physical presence as a collective duty, regardless of personal schedules, heat index, or how many hours of neutral tennis they must endure to support their representative. Washington was merely the opening chapter of this phenomenon. It immediately forced tournament organizers across the country to ask a pressing question that none of them had a clear answer for. Was this sudden surge of fan loyalty a temporary one-off anomaly, or was it the birth of a repeatable structural pattern? The definitive answer arrived much faster than anyone in the tennis industry anticipated, manifesting just a few short weeks later in the city of Toronto. Eala's third-round match against Alicia Parks at the Canadian event sold out completely within a few short hours of tickets being released to the general public. A local food vendor inside the arena actually overhauled their weekly menu offerings to accommodate the unexpected massive influx of Filipino fans flowing through the gates.
Cincinnati market impact and Sam query. If a secondary market like Toronto, which possesses a relatively modest Filipino demographic compared to major U.S. hubs, could experience sold-out sessions and venue menu modifications, what happens when that exact same dynamic hits a city with a population 10 times larger? Cincinnati provided the answer to that question, and it delivered it with deafening volume. Former American professional player Sam Querrey, who was sitting courtside providing expert commentary during the tournament, explicitly noted that Alex Eala's presence single-handedly drove ticket resale prices upward across the entire event, not merely for the court assignments where she was playing. Query described witnessing hundreds and eventually thousands of waving flags filling the stands, representing a visual density unlike anything he had ever observed in his decades of attending the Western and Southern Open. But Query highlighted an aspect of fan behavior that was even more unusual than the flag displays. These fans remained packed in their seats until the very final point of every evening session she played, night after night, even when matches dragged past midnight into the early hours of the morning. Consider the real-world implications of that commitment. Anyone with disposable income can purchase a stadium ticket, but staying until the final handshake on a rainy Tuesday night when leaving early means avoiding nightmare parking lot traffic and getting sleep before work demonstrates an entirely different level of devotion. That is the rare brand of fanaticism that major professional sports franchises spend decades and millions of dollars trying to cultivate. Washington, Toronto, and Cincinnati represented three distinct geographic markets with three separate local populations, yet each venue generated a significantly larger operational footprint than the city before it. Neither tournament directors, marketing agencies, nor Eala's personal management team seemed to know where the upper ceiling of this growth was located. Every single city completely shattered the attendance baseline established by the previous stop on the tour. U.S. Open preemptive infrastructure and wildcards. Now, Eala is stepping directly into the single municipality where the Filipino population is not just large, but officially represents the largest single urban concentration in the entire Western Hemisphere, situated in the exact same borough as the tournament grounds. If smaller host cities produced sold-out venues, menu redesigns, and secondary market ticket spikes, what happens when you multiply that behavioral energy by the sheer demographic volume of Queens? You might assume this organic fan wave caught the U.S. Open organizers completely by surprise, but that assumption would be dead wrong. The tournament directors at the United States Tennis Association did not simply sit back to see what might happen when Eala arrived in New York. They actively restructured their promotional schedule around her arrival weeks in advance. Before the main singles draw even commenced, tournament management slotted Eala into the premier Stars of the Open exhibition showcase on Arthur Ashe Stadium, placing her alongside elite next-generation talents like João Fonseca and Lerner Teen. Furthermore, they awarded her a high-visibility main draw wildcard spot in the mixed doubles event, pairing her directly with Canadian star Felix Auger-Aliassime. Neither of those high-visibility opportunities was dictated by her singles computer ranking, nor were they mandatory scheduling requirements. Both were cold, calculated business decisions executed by the tournament's executive board. Think of it through this operational framework. When city administrators know that an incoming musical artist will vastly overflow a venue, they do not wait for the gates to break down on opening night. They proactively construct secondary stages and expand security perimeters because the pre-sale metrics warned them of the impending wave. That is precisely what transpired in New York. The U.S. Open executives studied the data points from Washington, Toronto, and Cincinnati and made a strategic calculation that Eala's physical presence in Queens would be far too massive to handle without preemptive organizational infrastructure built specifically to contain and capitalize on it. Insider testimony and Anisimovan's remarks. If you still harbor skepticism regarding the scale of this movement, look closely at the candid statements made by the individuals who were physically present inside the player lounges and press rooms. In Cincinnati, tournament directors were surprisingly vocal regarding the operational impact of her matches. A senior official explicitly admitted in post-tournament briefings that the venue experienced an unprecedented wave of flag-bearing fans, noting that the sheer quantity eclipsed anything recorded in the tournament's long history. He noted that these fans operated not as isolated ticket buyers sitting quietly in random seats, but as a fully synchronized cultural collective that transformed the energy of the entire complex. This was not a generic public relations statement released by a junior staff member. This was a seasoned tournament director publicly acknowledging that a single teenager completely altered the physical atmosphere of a Masters 1000 event. Consider also the post-match comments from Amanda Anisimova after her intense, hard-fought victory over Eala. Rather than offering standard, rehearsed athlete cliches about executing their baseline game plan, Anisimova explicitly addressed the overwhelming crowd atmosphere. She openly praised Eala's fierce competitive spirit before making a far more insightful observation. She admitted that playing against Eala felt like competing against an entire nation, emphasizing that she deeply respected the crowd's passion because she recognized how intensely loved Eala is by her people. Take a moment to analyze that admission. A victorious top-tier player felt compelled during her court interview to explicitly validate the emotional weight of her opponent's fan base. That level of acknowledgement almost never occurs for a young player ranked outside the top 10 unless the physical atmosphere within the stadium becomes so loud and undeniable that ignoring it is literally impossible. This is no longer a temporary media narrative, it's a validated structural pattern confirmed by tournament directors and direct court rivals alike. The geographic crucible of Queens. Now, take every single piece of data we have established and contextualize it against the physical geography of New York City. The sold-out sessions in Toronto, the resale ticket spikes in Ohio, the flag-covered grandstands in DC, every single one of those events occurred in cities where the resident Filipino community represents a tiny fraction of the population living in New York. 94,000 Filipino residents live directly within the boundaries of Queens, the exact borough where the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center is built. That figure is completely unmatched by any other city on the international tour. It represents the absolute densest population center Alex Eala will ever perform in front of by a vast margin. This is precisely why calling this event an explosion is not cheap sensationalist headlines designed to generate views. It's the logical conclusion of a proven social pattern that has repeated 3 consecutive times in smaller markets, now arriving directly at the geographic epicenter best equipped to magnify it. Every structural piece of this puzzle aligns perfectly. The dramatic ranking climb from 53 to 18, the venue concessions altering menus, the ticket resale spikes, and the candid admissions from opponents who felt the ground shaking beneath their feet. When you assemble all those operational facts into a single narrative, the compelling question is no longer whether New York will explode with unprecedented fan energy. The real urgent question that needs to be asked by coaches, analysts, and fans alike is this immense historic wave of community expectation ultimately beneficial for Alex Eala's actual performance on court, or does it represent an overwhelming obstacle? Psychological pressure versus fuel for a 21-year-old. This is where our analysis must pivot away from celebrating impressive crowd figures and honestly look at the psychological reality resting on the shoulders of a young athlete. Extraordinary crowd atmosphere is a volatile element that cuts sharply in 2 opposing directions. On the one hand, an electric stadium atmosphere can elevate a player far beyond their normal physical limitations, providing an intoxicating rush of adrenaline that helps them retrieve impossible shots, fight through exhaustion, and perform beyond what any tactical coach could instruct from the player's box. The feeling of stepping onto a court not merely as an individual playing for prize money, but as an ambassador representing an entire culture can be a transformative competitive superpower. On the other hand, that exact same atmospheric energy can manifest as an excruciating, suffocating weight. This is particularly dangerous when layered on top of a brutal summer schedule that has already forced Eala through high-stress matches in Washington, Toronto, and Cincinnati alongside doubles commitments and mandatory media appearances. We must maintain an unsentimental, realistic perspective. Managing the emotional hopes of an entire global diaspora of tens of thousands of people is not something a teenager or even a seasoned veteran is naturally equipped to handle during the most critical Grand Slam fortnight of their young life. Even the most decorated legendary champions in modern history have struggled when transformed into instant political or cultural symbols overnight. Eala has repeatedly demonstrated remarkable mental fortitude against Grand Slam champions like Swiatek and Pegula, but no textbook or coaching manual exists for handling the psychological reality of becoming the central living icon for an entire immigrant community in their adopted backyard. WTA business realities and closing hook. Underneath the deep emotional narrative lies a fascinating shift unfolding within the modern structure of the WTA Tour itself. When secondary ticket markets spike purely based on one athlete's scheduled appearance, when vendors adjust inventory, and when tournament directors publicly center their media strategies around a single player, it signals a fundamental change in sports economics. The WTA is becoming increasingly reliant on individual star power and distinct cultural fan bases to drive real-world revenue in an increasingly crowded global entertainment marketplace. The speed at which Alex Eala has created this economic impact, leaping from relative obscurity to a major economic driver in a single tour season, forces the entire tennis ecosystem to re-examine how host tournaments operate. We're witnessing major Grand Slam organizers make tactical scheduling decisions, court assignments, and wildcard selections based directly on fan engagement metrics rather than traditional seedings alone.